Hey there, everyone. It's Christine again. Welcome to StayNTouch's live webinar. I'm really excited to have you all here. On behalf of StayNTouch's team, I'd just like to thank you all for taking the time to join us today. So getting started, just to provide you with a quick overview of today's topic, we're going to be starting by talking about the availability page, which will follow a discussion of the forecast report. And lastly, we'll be talking about the forecast guests and groups report. Here shortly, I will hand over the webinar to Daryl Calloway here. He has lots of experience in hotels. He was a general manager as well as a director of operations in both branded and independent hotel segments. After Daryl covers today's topics, we'll begin the Q&A component of this webinar. And I just wanted to point out that it's really easy to ask questions, and we definitely recommend you ask questions throughout the webinar. Simply click the chat bubble below the Join Me URL, and then send your questions to @Daryl Calloway. That's again @Daryl Calloway, and feel free to ask as many questions as you'd like during the webinar. And now we're ready to get started, so I'm going to hand over the call to Daryl. Daryl, please take us through the availability page.
Thanks, Christine. So we're going to start our look at the availability page today just by kind of looking at the general design of the availability. The availability is separated into 5 segments. Starts off with the occupancy line, which is in blue. That gives you an overall breakdown of your percentage occupancy, as well as showing you how many rooms you have total in your hotel. This also will incorporate, as you can see when I expand the view, any rooms that have been placed out of order. So if you notice at the top, this particular hotel that we're looking at has 45 total rooms on the property. However, on this day, we have one room that's out of order. So the actual rooms to sell has been reduced by that number and making the number of rooms basically 44. So the rooms to sell is always going to reflect your total rooms minus your out of order rooms. As you may know, in our system, we can manage both out of order and out of service rooms. Out of order rooms will always take away from your inventory, and out of service rooms do not. And, you know, as a general theme with StayNTouch, whenever you see the double arrows next to a heading, that lets you know that there's more information to view. So when we expand that view, it gives you more detail and more of a breakdown of your room inventory broken down by room type. Now, when I scroll down a little bit further, you'll see in green, or you'll notice in green, available rooms. This lets you know how many rooms you have available to sell right now. This is actually a total of your rooms available minus the rooms that have actually been sold in the property. And again, you know, when we expand that view, it gives you that breakdown by room type. If you notice in that screen or in that particular view, there are some rooms that are in white and some that are that are kind of grayed out or have kind of a shaded area. Anytime your room count drops below 6 rooms, it will shade that area, and that basically is to let you know, or to be a trigger, kind of a mental trigger, to let you know that you're getting close to your sold-out occupancy. So that is, you know, pretty much the benchmark. So whenever you get below 6 rooms, it will shade the area for that particular room type. Now, the third section, rooms sold, gives you a breakdown of how many rooms have been booked at the property. Now, this includes both bedded and non-bedded rooms, just so you know. And again, you know, the double arrows will expand the view and show you how many rooms in each particular room type have been booked during that time. Now, you'll also notice at the bottom, so we have your total number of non-group rooms, which a non-group room is basically any room that's not associated to a group or an allotment. You know, some properties refer to that as transient rooms. And then just below that, you have your line of all of your groups and allotments. So any definite groups or allotments that are booked for that day will be included in that line. And if you notice at the bottom, it breaks it down, you know, by definite, and then definite room blocks, and then how many of those that have been picked up. So it's kind of a summary of your group and allotment pickups, you know, to let you know how many you have that have been booked and how many have actually been picked up. The number of non-group rooms and number of group allotments that's shown here will always equal the number of rooms sold in the amber color, just so you know. Now, as far as the report is concerned, you can view this in 3 views. You can do a 7-day view, 14-day view, or 30-day view. And if you notice, the 14-day view allows you to, you can actually print that as a report, and it will print that with all of the room types showing. So that's kind of that's a newer feature that we've added recently to be able to actually print a hard copy of your availability. That print option is only available in the 14-day view, just so you know. And obviously, you can adjust the availability to whichever date that you want to search out in the future or what have you. Now, there are some other various ways that you can look at your availability through the availability screen. The second one is house status. So the house status is going to give you more of a graphical depiction of what's going on in the hotel right now. It gives you a breakdown of how many rooms you sold last night. What you sold, what you're expected to sell today, and also tomorrow. The cool thing about this is that, like I said, it gives kind of a graphical breakdown, so you can kind of compare and view very quickly how you're doing over the 3 days that you're looking at. And it also gives you a total of both your total revenue and your average rate at the bottom. So that one's kind of unique to the availability. So this one can be very handy and just kind of getting a quick snapshot what's happening in the property. If you have that owner to call up and say, hey, what did you sell last night? What was the rate, and what are you expecting to do, today? This can be a real quick way to find that information. The third option under the availability is the item inventory. So this one actually works hand in hand with your add-ons and your enhancements that are associated with your reservations. So when you set up your various enhancements and add-ons when your property is set up or configured, you can actually apply a finite number to specific add-ons. And when you do that, those add-ons and that number is going to show up on the item inventory. So what it does in effect is it gives you the ability to monitor how many of each one of those particular add-ons and enhancements that have been added to reservations. And when your number gets low and when you run out, you'll know. You can actually, for example, I know, a lot of properties are very focused on, rollaways and parking. You have, obviously, in your hotel, you have a finite number of rollaways and pack and plays, cribs and things like that. This gives you the ability to track those and know what you have on hand at any given time. And it works the same way as the availability, in that you can view it, in either 14 or 30 days at a time. And, obviously, you can change the date to move out to looking at future dates. So that can be a very handy tool. It gives you the ability to track those items as they're being sold and to know what you have on hand at any given time. Now, the last part of the availability are the group and allotments availability. As you know, with StayNTouch, we, unique to us, or unlike a lot of other systems, we actually separate groups from allotments, and what that does is it keeps those those crew rooms and those wholesaler rooms that they're so obviously so important to your business, separate from your keep the numbers and the production for those separate from the production for your groups, your group production. So it gives you a more accurate way of looking at how both the groups and allotments are producing. The groups and allotments availability screen look very similar in that typically they will have the number of days and the number of bookings that are happening for that particular day as a total at the top. And then when you expand the view, you can view what you have that's definite, tentative, prospect, and if you have other hold statuses that are set up at your property, those will also show on this report. So this can be very useful to your your BTSMs and your sales coordinators and people who actually manage those bookings to see what's been booked, what's showing as tentative, and things of that nature. The other cool thing is that the system will show you what groups are currently on the books based on the date range that you enter. So it'll show you. It's only going to show you only those bookings that are happening over that date range that you've pulled up. And when you expand the view next to each group, you can actually view what's been booked and what's been picked up. The other cool thing is that you can also release rooms directly from the screen. So you don't necessarily have to drill all the way down into the group booking in order to release those rooms. You can do it right there on the fly from the availability in seconds. And so the availability, or I should say the allotments availability works very similar in that, it breaks it down. It shows you, what you have on file, as far as definite, tentative, and prospects. And it will show you the pickup, or I should say the booked as well as picked up rooms by day. Now, the ability to release those right there on the fly can be very useful for your allotments because obviously, as the day moves forward, or as as you move forward through that contract for that allotment, you don't necessarily want to carry those rooms over. So you can come in and release those rooms, pretty much on the fly as you need. So that can be very handy. Now, and like just like with the availability, you can run that, that report to show it to render either with 7, 14, or 30 days at a time, and for a date range. So, the availability in general can be manipulated to really, show you what you're looking for, give you that quick snapshot. And don't forget that, you can access the availability virtually from any part of the system. So if you're in the process of making a reservation, you just click on that graph slide out, and that will immediately pull out the availability to show you what you have on hand. Now, at this point, we're going to transition over to the forecast reports. We have a total of 2 reports that you can run to give you forecast information on your room pickup and production. The first one is the forecast report. Now, this report actually gives you the ability, obviously, to run a date range. You can run it for past dates as well as future dates. Obviously, if you run it for a past date, it's going to give you information on actual numbers. Another cool thing is that, it gives you the ability to kind of focus that forecast. So if you want to look at a specific company and see how they're forecasting or how they're performing, you can target it towards specific companies or travel agents or groups and things like that. Also you can target it towards specific markets or sources, origins, and manipulate the report in various ways. Once you've selected your criteria, you can either click the show button to show it right there on the screen and then print it from that, or you can also export it to a CSV file. Once it's in CSV, you can manipulate it in Excel or some other spreadsheet program, and really pull out and extract the numbers and the data that you're looking for. From the forecast, when you pull it up, it's going to give you a breakdown of your forecast by room type, also by adults and children, and it'll also do a comparison of your report compared to last year. So it gives you pacing information based on where you were at that time last year. So that can be a very useful piece of information once you develop a little bit of history at your property. The other thing is that the system is gonna basically paginate your the results. So it's going to show up to 25 days on one screen, at a time. So if you've run it for 30 days, to view the last bit of that data, you just click on the next button at the bottom, and that will take you to the second page of those report results. And on that second page, if you'll notice here, it's going to show the totals for each one of your columns. So as you can see, it gives you a breakdown of your arrivals and departures for each particular day, and also over the date range that you selected, your number of occupied rooms, and all those other numbers that you really care about, ADR, revenue, obviously. So this can be a very useful information in kind of gauging where your business is at any given time. Now, in contrast, the forecast guests and groups report is going to give you, is going to let you run the report by date range. And, you can sort it by date, obviously. Once you run the report, it's going to give you a breakdown of your transient versus group rooms. And it's going to show you your occupied rooms, versus, your occupied transient rooms versus your occupied group rooms. And then also a breakdown of the rooms total, the percent occupied, as well as your ADR and your revenue and the RevPAR number as well. So that's kind of an added feature, and that's kind of handy because obviously that's the RevPAR is an apples to apples comparison, that you can use to compare to any hotel. So that can be a very valuable and useful tool. If you notice, for each day, you have each day is basically divided into your arrivals, your in-house guests, and your departures when it comes to your rooms booked. And it's the same thing for your occupied rooms. So as far as occupied rooms, it'll give you a breakdown of how many transient guests you have in the first line, how many group reservations or group rooms that you have booked, and then the total at the bottom. So that can be, very, very handy, like I said, in determining how you're performing compared to transient, between transient and group. And this one also gives you a comparison to your last year numbers as well. So that can be, hugely valuable. At this point, I think, we'll open it up to questions. Please send them via the chat, and we'll respond to them as we get them.
All right, Daryl, I have one question already. This is regarding the inventory page. The question is the inventory deducted when a reservation is created or when the guest checks in?
The inventory is deducted as soon as the reservation is created.
Great. And for a second question, again, this is about the availability page. Will the numbers on this screen ever be negative?
Yes, that's a great question. The numbers will show as negative. It will, if you ever overbook a specific, room type, or if you overbook the total hotel, it'll show a negative sign next to that number. So it will, stand out pretty prominently. Yes, it'll show negative.
Awesome. And then this question is regarding the forecast guests and groups report. Can you just tell us a little bit more about what RevPAR will show us on this report?
So RevPAR in general is, stands for revenue per available room. So that is, basically a calculation of your total rooms on hand and your revenue for any given day. So, it is a basic tool that most revenue managers and reservations managers use to, accurately track how their hotels are. Okay, it looks like we have a question. We missed the groups arrivals, departures in this report when the reservation are not picked up yet from the block. Is this correct? So I assume that means arrivals. In groups on the availability, it is going to show you, your total that's been picked up. To see the breakdown for your individual groups, you would go to the group line under availability to view that. Under the forecast for groups, guests and groups, will actually allow you to extract some of that information on arrivals and departures related to specific groups, because you can target that towards specific groups and pull your forecast based just on that particular group booking. Yeah, one thing I didn't point out is that from this screen, you can actually drill down into the specific group booking, to view more details on that particular group. When you do it from here, it does take you immediately to the rooming list. So, obviously it's a quick way to get to the area where you can, pick up those rooms quickly. Kind of handy for your reservation staff to be able to drill down and access this information quickly. They don't have to go through a lot of clicks. It's just a matter of opening up availability, finding the group, and then clicking on that group to expand it and get to the rooming list.
Excellent. All right, folks. Well, that wraps up today's webinar. As a reminder, you'll all receive a copy of the recording, so keep an eye on your email for a copy of this recording and future invites to webinars. Thank you so much all, and enjoy the rest of your day.